Welcome to the Environmental Awareness Show. And I'm Dean Bell here with Dean Kevin. I'll be starting off with Geoff Lawton. He's a permaculture activist. He's talking about soil fertility, and we're going to have a short video here with him talking about how to keep your soils fertile and manageable. I'm down here in Mexico dealing with sandy silt soil on a ridge, on a hillside near the beach, and it's been very, very difficult to grow anything, along with just the soil having no nutrients, because they've been either washed down, eroded, down the hill, plus sandy silt. There's no really organic material in it, in the composition of it, plus the wind factor, plus the gophers, the squirrels, people stealing the food, which is okay. I want to grow enough for everybody, but it's a big challenge. So I'm curious to see what Geoff has to say about soil fertility, because that's one of the big problems I'm dealing with here is just growing anything besides cactus and some succulents, which really don't need a lot. They can take care of themselves, but anything that needs nitrogen, a lot of plants need the nitrogen to grow, their leaves, etc. And the soil just doesn't have the components for healthy living. I am adding things like horse manure, sawdust, anything I can find around here. I do have a bio activator. It's a liquid that I add to the plants, and that doesn't even seem to encourage the microorganisms to start with their activity and help the plants. So let's see what Geoff here has to say. So just a short little 13-minute video.
Hi, Geoff Lawton here. Early mornings, day 2 on the farm again, and I'm in the kitchen garden. And this is a little video about intense small space gardening. This is not a small kitchen garden. This is a large kitchen garden, but it's got a lot of small space design that I'm going to run you through so you can see how much production you can get out of a small area, how intense it can be, how easy it can be, how diverse it can be, and how you can hold the fertility together so it just gets better all the time. Let's have a look. It's easy to put together these really diverse, intense garden beds with masses of variation in there. Flowers, vegetables, herbs, it's ginger here we're going past, all kinds of salad greens, and whole mixtures of stuff, and still have perennial overstory in this climate, like papayas. Vegetable gardens can be put in with just cardboard, paper, really thick, mulch, really thick, say 150 to 200 mil, and then little pockets of compost. And you can just really mix and match. It doesn't really matter. So you just make all the holes and fill in with a diversity of seedlings or seeds. Here you have a great big mix of vegetables. And when you want to plant something like carrots, you just make a long slot, put in sand and compost together, because they like a sandy mix, and plant your carrots as a long line. But most things can just go in little pockets of compost. And what doesn't germinate or doesn't work as a little seedling, you just transplant something else in there. You're imitating a forest floor with the way you're planting a vegetable garden. Perennial spinach actually grows continuously, no season. This is Antheria sisu, a fantastic addition to a garden. Little parsley edges, always a great addition to an edge pluck in a garden to a footpath. Tomato and spinach, perennial, grows continuously, great to put on the end of a garden, like Brazil spinach, just grows from cuttings. Papaya and tamarillo, with some climbing yam involved, shading. A watermelon, this can be edge plant into a garden. Tomato and cucumber cages, just round wire cages, just sheep net. So your tomatoes just come straight up the inside, the cucumbers go over the top and shade your summer tomatoes, which often boil on the plant in this climate. Around the outside, we've got basil, a companion. Tomato cages can turn into absolute rampancy. So they're almost out of control at a certain point when you're just oversupplied with pick all the way around the cage. Lettuces can just be grown rampantly as a seed crop across the garden, and then the ones that don't get picked go to seed and seed the garden again. Tomatoes grow with marigolds as a good companion, and lettuces grow with tomatoes as well as a good companion, along with basil. So much colour, so much shape, the occasional flowers, different forms. It's so confusing to pests. You really don't have many pest problems at all when you cram in so much diversity, so tightly spaced. But we need to look at fertility. How do we hold the fertility up? Because you don't need to worry about rotational planning too much. All you have to do is keep fertilizing the soil. And that comes down to a few basic elements. But somewhere there has to be a base fertilizer. And that base fertilizer we need to make ourselves with the minimum of inputs. So we have all kinds of things in position, particularly compost. Now here we have a large number of compost being made because we have a large garden and a lot of people to feed, and we're training people to do this. Right at this end we have finished compost, and I'm just going to unwrap one here underneath me. There we go. That's pretty much a finished compost. It could go a bit further. It's got a few chunky bits in it, but it's starting to look like soil or forest humus. And we've created that like this, just by turning. And let me run you through the process at this end. I've got to capture this morning, otherwise we'll be finished. And at this end, we have some cages. You'd only ever need one cage if you had the room. And this one demonstrates it quite well. Got a set of layers here. So we've got brown material that's shredded or broken down into small sizes. And that's probably what's growing the mushrooms outside, actually. See the mushrooms. We've got brown material, green material, and manure. Brown material, green material, manure. Brown material, green material, manure, all the way to the top. And particularly the brown material is slow to break down, so you need to increase the surface area by chopping it up. And this is a really simple way to make compost if you have the room. Only if you have the room. So you make up a cage like this, you clip it together. We've actually used dog clips here. Simple sort of way of clipping it together, and split rings on the other side so it's kind of hinged. And we leave it in here for just 1 week. 1 week later, we turn it. So that'll be a Monday. It's been a week in a cage. Then on a Monday it turns, and then again on a Wednesday, and then again on a Friday. So 3 turns, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, for 3 weeks, and it's done. That's what's happened all the way down here. And at the other end, you got the result that I showed you at the start. It's that simple. 1 week in a cage, turn Monday, Wednesday, Friday for 3 weeks, and it's all over. 1 month later, you got 1 cubic meter, almost exactly the same volume you started off with, to fertilize your garden. One of the best fertilizers you can possibly use. And I'm just going to show you what we do with our urban tractor. It's a very basic deep litter system we've got here at the moment. I'm going to show you how we get at least 1 cubic meter of compost out every 2 weeks. So this is our little urban chicken tractor. It's a compost tractor, and it's all made out of recycled materials. We made it with the farm workshop, all the little doors and things. But it's very basic and covers 16 square meters in total. It's 2 meters wide and 8 meters long. And this is the chicken house. Harriet and Rudy are inside emptying out the deep litter I've got a little bit of a cucurbacea vine, kind of gourd, tropical cucumber growing on the outside. We've recycled a couple of shed doors here. And this is the material coming out. And that was just mulch. So it's just paddock mulch there. And it's been in the tractor here for about 2 weeks. So I think we're going to get about, what, 6 wheelbarrows you're getting out?
Yeah, at least.
At least 6 wheelbarrows. And this is pretty high grade material. So if I go in, we've filled it up right up to these tin edges. That was that much full. We've got this set up so we've got a little auto waterer here. So the chickens just peck in here and they get their water. And that goes to a little 20 litre jug that's on the outside. We've got it covered with a planter bag, and that stops it going getting algae. We've got a little recycled tin can here full of grit, so they've got their grit. And we've got a bit of shade cloth on the outside because we're in a hot climate in the summer. And right now we've locked them into the roost, and they just have a flat roost here. Some recycled 20 litre drums at the back for nest boxes. The door that's closed them in there is the door that closes the manure receptacle mulch underneath. There's a concrete slab there. There's a door at the back that opens, and this door that also closes the chickens into the roost comes down and closes off this lower section. So the chickens don't get to this. They just drop all their night manure, goes through onto this mulch. So this is very rich in manure. We've locked them out while we change the system, so they're locked into their roost. And we've got a little dust bath in there with some sulfur in it so that they don't get chicken mites. I've got one rooster in here because we do incubate these eggs, and we've got a basic wire ramp that we put up so they can get in and out on the ramp. We're going to fill this back up. We're going to take out that bottom material as well. We can take it out on either side. It's pretty simple. We're just about empty now. Really doesn't take up a large footprint. So I'll just come through, guys. There we go. Simple way you can fertilize your home garden. Now at the back here, I have a little door. Simple little door, little latch there. That just opens up to our nest boxes, which we're about to refill with straw. So that's how we get our eggs out. I have another hinge door here. There we go. That opens right up here. And I'll just latch that on. So that's the door that goes right into the back of the manure collection from the roost. That goes straight through. So we've got a door on either side of this roost manure collection, and there's a concrete slab here so we can clean it all off. So that's very high nitrogen material there. That'll be coming out pretty soon. We can put it directly on plants that love high nitrogen, or we can put it through the compost cycle and it will fast track our compost. Now if you don't want to keep your chickens in there all the time, you want to give them a bit of a free run, you can set a little pen up outside, either a temporary net fence, or you can have a little area set up so you can just open doors and let them come back out again. So now our material's going up to compost. So Harriet's going to take this up to our composting area, and it'll sit in a cage for a week, and then it'll turn every other day, or at least 3 times a week for a month, and come out as high grade compost. And here we go, Rudy's stacking it back up. This stuff's been sitting around getting wet in the rain, so it's already getting a bit warm. But it's really just grass clippings off the fields, off the paddocks, that we're throwing back in. By the time we've finished, it'll all be full up to that level of the tin, almost 300 mil, 1 foot high almost, right the way through and underneath the roost as well. 2 weeks time, we'll do it all again. And we've got a free chicken fertilizer factory. Simple worm farms like bars with a bucket underneath work really well. Here you have a shade cloth over the top of the worms themselves, and because we've got rainy season, a sheet of iron. But often there's not room for some systems like this in a very small space. Here's a bucket, it's actually a plastic flower pot sunk into the middle of a herb spiral growing bed. But these will work in vegetable gardens too. That's going to be filled up with compost, well, food scraps, and then some worms put in the top, and then a bird bath put on top of that. So here we've got the sub pod, which is a manufactured system, and it works perfectly and actually keeps all flies and maggots out. Just lift the cloth there. We've got a little cloth, a geo fabric, and underneath we've got the food scraps that we add, and you can see the worms there. This is a very tidy pre-constructed system. There's no mess, there's no smell, and it interacts with the garden and the garden fertility very well. So you can see around the outside we've planted Brahmi, which is reasonably hard to grow in this garden, but here it's grown really easily with the fertility of the sub pod. A great addition.
Okay, that was Geoff Lawton, permaculture expert. I'm kind of jealous about all the greenery he has there in Australia or wherever he's at. We're here in the desert of Baja. And we really don't have a lot of organic material to use for compost. When I first moved here, I saw little green plants coming up, and people told me, well, that's a weed, and it's considered a weed, tumbleweed. It grows into a big round bush and green, and then it dries out. And then you see it rolling around in these balls in the wind. And then there's really hardly any weeds even here in the sandy, silty soil in Baja. So I'm looking at ways, and this is inspiring to watch Geoff and his ideas. And it's always cool just to work in the garden and see what you can come up with. It's something you can do. You can be creative. You don't have to do it the right way. Just like experiment and see what works in your environment, in your soils. Build your own soil like he was talking about with his compost pile there. Food scraps, manures, anything you can find that's organic. You do the browns, like the dry leaves, things like that. You do the greens, which is the food scraps and grasses, fresh cut grasses. And then a layer of soil. Build these layers. Turn it, water it. Experiment with how you can build this compost resource that will help when you plant your trees, flowers, vegetables. You add it to the soil, and it just enriches it by adding microorganisms to the soil, which help to break down, their exudates, however you say it. That's what feeds the roots of the plants. These little microorganisms. So the more you have in the soil, the better. And as I say, there's not a lot going on here with the soils here in Baja. I notice where I'm at, down the hill, where there's an estuary and river, dried out river. Part of it's dry, part of it's still has water in it, but an estuary is where the fresh water meets the sea, salt water, and we have lots going on down here. But where I'm at, where my garden is, up on a hillside, everything's eroded and washed down, and the good stuff's washed down into the bottom of the valley, and that's where the growers are. We grow cucumbers and cilantro, tomatoes, squashes. They grow corn here. A lot of things going on here in Baja, which they ship to the United States, especially LA. We have a greenhouse here next to us that grows cucumbers, and every day they truck it to LA, at least they used to. But it's fun to work and play in the garden. It kind of gets you back into like where we were, away from the computer and away from the techie stuff, and a reminder that, we are supported by the natural environment, clean air, clean food, clean water, and we want to maintain these because our planet is dying, and it's the UN gives us like 10 years. I mean, Dane Wigington of geoengineering.watch, who's really watching the quality of the air and the soil. I mean, he gives us a year, 2 years, 3 years. I mean, anything could happen. Once it happens, it'll happen quickly in a way. Once we lose our supply chains and the government keeps on having farmers burn their food or waste their food, get rid of their food, and keep spraying the chemtrails, keeps poisoning everything, polluting everything. It's just a matter of time. So we're here just trying to help people wake up to what's going on so they can do better. So they can be part of the wake up, be part of helping others wake up, because it takes, individuals standing together one by one to do this. It's not going to be the UN Sustainability Agenda 2030 that's going to do it. If you watch them, they're just up there talking pretty words, and they don't really do anything. What are they doing? They've been seeing this going on for a long time. Nothing really gets done. So it's up to us individually to do something. It really is. It's individuals doing something and then expanding outward. And that's where I see these little gardens that you may have at your home. It could be a kitchen garden, just right outside your door in the backyard. And you just start small and just start with an area you can manage and pay attention to daily. And then once you see success, once you see what works and what doesn't, you expand outward. Just expand it. In permaculture, they call it zones. So zone 1 is where you frequently inhabit. There's a lot of traffic there, so you can pay attention to it. Zone 2 is where you once in a while you go to. Zone 3, less. Zone 4, zone 5 are more like wilderness areas where you don't pay any attention to it, but you just let it be wild, let it do its thing. These are kind of metaphors for your own environment and where you live in a way too. But do something with the environment. Plant a tree, plant a flower in a pot. I mean, do something to get you back into this what we have, instinctively, this organic connection to the land. Do something and then expand outward. Yeah,
Kevin,
you're out there, you're out there in the usually out in the forest, Peter. Where you have Florida there?
Yeah, forest right behind me. I'm trying to get a camera on it. All I got is this really pretty tree that we've grown. Carol said it was the nicest tree she's ever had on any property. It's just this little bush. I don't know if you can see it over my shoulder.
Yeah.
So anyway, you see what we did was build mounds. And I also have stacks of wood and leaves that I just put here and there, and a bunch of them all around. And they're mulching and composting, natural, like that. And the land here, just our property, this property is very rich, fertile black soil. I think it was used as a tobacco farm, and it's unusual. There are other farms all around that are right across the street over there, where I'm looking is a farm, and probably the same kind of good soil, but it can be also the salty, not particularly nutritious, or it's been the phosphorus has been taken out of it. There's a big citrus plant nearby, and it's been working for a long time, and it's been creating cancers and whatnot in the town, has an increase in percentage, cancers, etc. But this property, we have woods behind us, about 2 acres. We're 2.5, and the neighbor is 2.5. So that's 5 total, and half of it is wooded. I've made a few trails back there, but that's about it. And we have fruit trees, pomegranates, and not pomegranates, tangerines and orange. And we've planted some plantains and banana and papaya. And I don't think I could go over there and just see our new plants that we just put in for papaya. We'll see if they got through a cold that was one night a couple of days ago, but it wasn't that cold. So it is a concern because we're right on the border here where the can get, 26 degree has killed some of the orange trees and so forth. We have peach tree also that's not producing anymore, 2 of them not producing anymore. The thing about on the building these mounds was an experiment too, like you said. It's very simple, and we just tried that, and the moles and whatnot like these mounds quite a bit, I think. But we've been able to produce a plant like this tree behind us. And we've got on the other side of it, there's a few things. There's some peppers that have been doing very well this year, and tomatoes are back there. Butterflies coming right on camera here on this plant. It's beautiful to see that every day or whenever that happens. But then we have all kinds of different things that we just put in different places. So. We have some ginger, but it's not the ginger that you can get for it's ginger, not garlic. It's ginger, and it grows with these pine cone-like shaped big cones that are red. They're very pretty, but it's a poison, or it's not edible ginger. Nonetheless, they come out at this time of year or a couple months earlier in the fall, and that's there's other things to do that aren't necessarily edibles, planting trees. We have lines of cedar trees, borders, and also what they call red tips, which have grown very big. I haven't seen any red tip that big anywhere in anybody's place around here, and I've seen very few orange trees, tangerine. I swear I think we're the only ones. So I mean, it's generally, you're 100% that we have to do something ourselves and be demonstrated. And I've communicated this to others who I know of other religious persuasions and different ones. Some of them are doing some of this. I know some Seventh-day Adventists that do. The Jehovah's Witness, who had this property across next door with the oranges, is getting it ready for sale, and he's asking me to get everything out that I had stored over in the little shed, which is not a real big deal, but the fact is that he still hasn't said that he would sell it to us, and it's only about $27,000 for 2.5 acres with some buildings on it. It's spectacular, generally speaking. He's even got a a fallout shelter that he built. It's underground, about 10 feet. It's a little fallout shelter. I mean, he's really panicked about everything in nature and the end of the world, or whatever their view is of it. And it's kind of funny, but so he's said this week that he wants to sell it. So we're preparing it, cleaning it all out, and I don't know. I don't have the cash, so to speak. You know what I mean? I don't have credit. It won't give me credit. My wife doesn't want to buy it, and I don't know exactly there, but it could be a whole orchard very easily. We actually lined over water to him. So if the neighbors are working together, they could actually do more. We could have done more, but we weren't on exactly the same page. Friends, yeah, but same thing with family members and all that. I mean, talk to them or neighbors who are next door to family members, and trying to get them to build farms and do something. All they want to do is put some buildings on it. They don't put any blossoming trees. And, it's astounding. The whole thing about being reliant on the food system and all of that. And you can see it degrading, and we're experiencing that. In so many ways, including the air environment, the sound environment, water, the river here being polluted regularly by the power plant that serves the city of Valdosta. It's not a big city, but it's on the Georgia side, and so the Florida people are not really pressing the Georgia people to take care of it, or they don't care. They try, and the Georgia people are not taking care of it. So if it rains and floods out the plant, it will flow down the river all the way to the Gulf, and it will take maybe a month for it to clear out. Or it's not like huge piles of pollution, but the river is polluted. You can't fish, and when it's in the state, and I think most of the locals don't fish there anyway. Nonetheless, it can be quite beautiful and clean, and but the bacterial danger of infection and all that is present. So same thing. That's what I'd like to do, or am trying to urge. I know some people that have a farm in Canada that are doing this to the best of their ability, and it's quite beautiful there. And they've got 2 man-made lakes with beautiful cows from Scotland, and they sell their products once a week at the market. Milk products and goats, and I think meat also, and other things, related in that vein, I think. Of course, it's 6 months of the year. It's too cold really to grow outdoors a whole lot. And, but they've been urging them to get on the calls and express and stuff like that. Same thing. So I'm really sharing that your idea, individuals. I thought I could find a way. There's a bunch of empty shipping containers all loaded up somewhere nearby. Empty, that is. And I know that they can be transformed into houses or something like that, but also planters and I don't know, maybe carriers of plant material, and it could be delivered. That's another idea to ship. Not the greatest idea, but just thinking of it out loud while you were mentioning it. So, thanks, Val.
Thanks, Peter, for the Florida report. Interesting. It's interesting to know what's happening in your part of the world. Thank you.
The following article was sourced from the Organic Research Center, Elm Farm. The title of this article, The Basics of Soil Fertility, Shaping Our Relationship to the Soil. The enhancement of soil fertility was a crucial value already to the pioneers of organic farming, but the conservation of a fertile soil is not always given enough attention, and yet organic farming depends on good natural soil fertility. Exhausted and damaged soils cannot offer the desired performance. The cultivation of soil fertility requires a lot of care. The following information offers a view on soil fertility from different angles. It deliberately avoids offering universal instructions, but rather seeks to provide information to stimulate new thinking about a sustainable relationship to the soil. Why talk about soil fertility? In cultivating the land, we live from and with soil fertility. An ecologically vital soil is continuously restoring its productivity. If we neglect its needs, it suffers as a result. The soil loses vitality and becomes more sensitive to weather and erosion. Harvests decline. In organic farming, damage cannot be offset by purely technical means. This is why an exhausted or degraded soil requires recovery by means of ecologically sensitive actions, which help the soil to regenerate on its own. Despite the practical constraints and problems, many possible actions are available, enabling us to act according to our responsibility as farmers for a living soil. It is worth it, not only financially. In the 1960s, scientist Ernst Klapp defined soil fertility in a practical sense as the natural, sustainable ability of a soil to produce plants. He described it as the ability of the soil to provide everything for stable yields without external aid. Since then, agricultural science has widely been replacing the comprehensive term soil fertility with a multitude of physical, chemical, and biological variables. One of the current tasks of science is to render such detailed knowledge applicable to a farming practice. Many practitioners have developed their own strategies and techniques for the care of soil fertility. They have learnt through observation and relied on their intuition. Such experience and the knowledge gained via scientific experiments and observations complement each other well. This information aims to stimulate the practice of a truly sustainable culture of a fertile living soil based on well-tried fundamentals, as well as on the testing of new possibilities. Thomas Feisel, advisor of BioLand, said, "We feel that in many areas, simple cause and effect observations do not match up to our actual living environment. This is why it is more timely and necessary than ever to see the soil as a complex organism instead of a simple chemical mechanical model." Part 1. Principles of Soil Fertility. The Soil of Pioneers. Organic farming has developed as an agricultural approach since the beginning of the 20th century. However, its historical roots are as old as agriculture itself. For several decades, organic farming was practiced and developed only on a small network of farms. The 1980s and 1990s saw increased recognition and newcomers to organic farming. Before introducing the reader to current knowledge about good treatment of soil fertility from a holistic point of view, based on scientific and practical information, we would like to acknowledge its roots with the help of a few quotes from the early pioneers. Influences of soil biology. The farm owner Albrecht Thayer recognized in 1821 that, much in the way that organic matter is a product of life, it is also the precondition of life. And while most researchers were turning towards agricultural chemistry, Charles Darwin discovered a fact most crucial for organic farming in 1882, and he stated, "The plough is one of the oldest and most valued inventions of man, but long before its existence, the land was regularly ploughed by earthworms." At the beginning of the 20th century, new microscopes were tapping into the inconceivable diversity of soil life, and an ecological way of thinking started to develop. Richard Bloeck, 1927, wrote, "Through the activity of microscopic life, arable land became a real, living being. The image of a cycle reoccurred." The Swiss farmer Alois Stockley wrote in 1946, "Persistent and increasing soil fertility depends on the condition of a cycle of the substances, yet in many places there is resistance against accepting the integral role of organisms in the soil in this context. One of the co-founders of organic farming, Hans Peter Reusch, regarded the cycle of life to be essential. 1955. The living substance is introduced to each living being in the substance cycle. The agronomist Franz Sequeira emphasized in 1951 that the tilth, or optimum soil condition, is defined as the biological engineering of the crumb structure by soil inherent microorganisms. Ideological ideas and influences. Rudolf Steiner taught the following during his agricultural course in 1923. One needs to know that fertilization must consist in life promotion of the soil, and in the seed we gain an image of the universe as a whole. In England, Lady Eve Balfour in 1943 stated that only ecology associated with Christian values may help us realize that all in the heavens and on earth is only part of one whole, and further that the health of the soil, plant, animal, and human is one and indivisible. Her agricultural colleague, Sir Albert Howard, observed in 1948 that Mother Earth never tries to do agriculture without animals. She always cultivates mixed cultures. Organic farming is supposed to adopt Mother Earth's natural agriculture method, said Mina Hofstetter in 1949, a Swiss pioneer of organic farming who regarded the feminine qualities of the earth to be a key to a deeper understanding of soil fertility. Mother Earth may speak directly to the female farmer if the latter finds peace and quiet to listen. She will teach us again, or wipe us out. Why the term organic and ecological farming? The biology of organic farming was literally understood as a life teaching by its founders, i.e., as a holistic life and farming philosophy. Rather than concentrating on chemical substances, they focused on cohabitations of individual beings or ecosystems, which on a higher level were perceived to be a unit in the whole, i.e., an organism. Hence, organic farming uses the terms soil organism, farm organism, organism earth, as well as soil, farm, and earth as an ecosystem, not to replace the interaction and the steady continuation of natural and social life by technology, for many against the backdrop of an interaction with spiritual, divine influences, was believed to be essential, exemplifying the interconnectedness of all things. The following guiding principle was coined: healthy soil equals healthy plants, which equals healthy humans. This idea is still key in our day, and stated, for example, in the principle of health, one of the 4 principles of organic agriculture defined by IFOAM 2005. Jürgen Hess, University of Kassel, Witzenhausen, Germany, stated that soil fertility is the indispensable foundation of agriculture, not oil. This is why the soil belongs in the hands of those who nurture it, not those of speculation. In order to cope with the challenges of the 21st century, practical knowledge gathered by farmers and scientific knowledge of academia must come together better.
Yeah, the one good thing about technology is that we have things like aquaculture, aeroponics, things, you know, that you don't need the soil actually to grow healthy plants. And that's one good thing about technology. There's a lot of bad things, but you know, we expand into growing things without the soil. If we can provide the nutrients they need, you can grow plants in water, like we know, aquaculture with the fish providing the fertilizers, etc. So there's a lot of ways to do things. That's why all over the world we're bringing this information in. And thank you, Kevin. That's interesting with the soils. I mean, that's just crucial about healthy soils and making the soil diverse, just as well as the surface world. You know, diversity is key, not monoculture, but a diverse culture of plants and trees, shrubs. Like what's his name said that that you know it actually discourages pests if you have a diversity of plants in your garden. They get confused, which is kind of an interesting way of looking at it. If there's one crop, I mean, they know what to go for. If they're interested, they'll go for it and destroy it. But if there's a diversity, plants can help protect each other, like the marigold you plant with the tomato. It's a protection that the bugs don't like the marigold, what it gives off. There's companion planting, you know, where each plant has its role in protecting the survival of each. So there's so much going on in the world of biology there and the biosphere that we're living in. I kind of miss my mulch. You know, I had access to this tree mulch, these arbor chips at the tree companies. They grind up the trees once they prune them. There's so little of that down here in Mexico. There's so little trees, really. You go east inland, we do have the Sierras here, Sierra Madres. They have the pines and cedars, but here on the coast, it's desert, it's arid, semi-arid. So there's no trees really. And then I don't have the mulch, which is again, an organic material you can use to you can just stack it in a pile, and after 3 years, it can grow things in it. It starts breaking down naturally, and you can grow things in the mulch. We have, where we live in a ranch, we live in a valley. So there's a river that forms, it comes down from the mountains, and it forms and goes out to the sea. But there's a lot of underground water available. So we have a natural forested area, actually, which is really cool here in the desert because of the underground water. So there's oaks, eucalyptus, olives, sycamores, different kind of trees that have been naturally grew up along the river. It's dry right now, but when it rains, like I say, it fills up, but the trees get their water from the underground source there. So anyway, welcome, Ronald. We're just talking about the soil here, particularly today in the Environmental Awareness Show. So
okay,
talking about the environment and the soils, and how are you doing there in Modesto and the Stanislaus County? How are your soils there? Are you near?
well, our soils are they're all right for growing trees. We have a lot of almonds and walnuts. We used to have a lot of peaches. We got an awful lot of grapes. So our soil is good. We just need rain.
Yeah.
Got no rain.
Would you get the runoff from the Sierras there? Is that why your soil's so good? You're in the foothills of the
Well,
Sierra?
where we're at, we're in a dry, kind of a dry area. The winds sort of split north and go south, and we're sort of where I'm at here. But that's it's kind of dry, but we grow an awful lot of food here.
Good. We need
So
it.
our runoff comes from from Shasta Lake, and which feeds Sacramento River, and we got the American River, and we got all of those others that we're just in a spot where we just don't get a lot of rain, but we have, our reservoirs are usually pretty full, usually, when you're not messing with our clouds. So our main problem is rain.
Yeah. Well, they have in the Bay Area. I know they've got restrictions now because of the
They
lack
got
of
their
rain.
games they're playing.
Yeah.
They got their games.
I saw a map, a really interesting map of how the rivers run from Shasta down through Sacramento, American River, Feather River, and the little offshoots. It's really interesting how the valley there in the California is being fed. Starting.
Well, our water's right here comes from Maloney's. They have we do get some electricity from it,
Mm-hmm.
and we do need a little bit of rain once in a while to fill the reservoirs back up. Yeah, you're right. Our main water comes in Sacramento, American rivers, and I guess the Feather River, that's all feeds down into our area. We've had some really bad floods. We used to have some, really bad floods, and even with our dams in place, but we just haven't had the water. So we're just waiting.
What's your elevation there in Modesto?
I think we're about 70 feet.
Okay, you're in the valley.
Feet. We're in a valley. We got mountains that protect us from the ocean, so it goes up and then drops down into the valley. And go ahead.
The question is that the Steinbeck Valley?
It's the it's the San Joaquin Valley.
Which I think
you know who I mean, John Steinbeck, the writer. He wrote in someplace like Modesto or nearby. Anyway, it's a famous, he's the, what was that movie in 1939?
Grapes of Wrath, is it?
Grapes of Wrath, yes. Right.
Well, I'm not sure where that's at. I think that's in the valley further south. But the San Joaquin Valley is that's a long. We're pretty wide and pretty deep. I think we're about 200-300 miles long.
Yeah, at least it was like 600, maybe even 800 if you want to count up there.
Well, I think it stops somewhere around Bakersfield.
Well,
And then you got the Grapevine, then you drop down into the LA Valley.
but it goes way
I
up
guess.
north too. I mean, they consider it going up at least 600 miles, 300-400 miles wide. It's a huge growing area in California.
Well, I didn't think, our area starts somewhere around Red Bluff.
Yeah, okay.
And then that's
Makes sense. Yeah.
I think they grow walnuts there, but I'm not sure.
Yeah.
I've kind of lost the. They used to have a lot of peaches until they finally figured out it's easier to grow almonds and nuts because they don't deteriorate and go bad within 3 days. So they all started in the nut business.
Aren't they replacing the almonds with, what is it, pistachios or pecans? One of the two, I heard.
I don't know. They all seem to be, almonds seem to be the main thing.
Apricots was a big thing where I grew up in the Bay Area, San Francisco Bay Area in the south.
Oh,
south
yeah.
Bay,
They used to,
all over.
peaches, apricots. Yeah, everybody, that's changed a lot. Pecans, I think they're growing some pecans. No, I don't know. There seems to be a problem about the pecan business. They seem to be, you got the pecans on the one side and you got the almonds on the other side, and these guys battling each other. Who's going to control the markets? And so we have a control business problem here.
I just want to add something. There's a recent Billy Bob Thornton made a show where he was a lawyer. He is a lawyer, and he was working in the valley outside Los Angeles, where this company was stealing the water rights and controlling all the water in order for them to have access and complete control of it for their farms. And I'm pretty sure that's similar to the issues they have with the pecan farmers, whatever Ronald was talking about in general. That's what's happened, is that they've accessed the pipelines of the water, and that's a huge financial issue, obviously. So the farmer control group is has been, and probably continually, and so when there's a drought, I noticed recently there was a drought in California, but you're out of water, like in Modesto, etc.
Yeah, I think they've been dumping the reservoirs. We had a 7-year drought, and we weren't this low even with a 7-year drought. There's a lot of funny things going on right now, and I think the valley you're talking about, the Imperial Valley, that could be the area that they're having water problems. Their water comes from the Colorado River.
Right.
That's
possible.
Yeah, that's where it comes from, and then everybody else gets the Shasta Dam and Oroville, and I don't think they get anything from the Maloney's, but I'm not sure about that. We have a lot of small reservoirs that need to be refilled, and they've been playing with our weather. They're trying. I still believe they're trying to bankrupt their farmers here, and then sell the property to China. I think China wants our industries really bad. They've already got a pig business, so who knows what else they're going to end up with.
Soil fertility, a term undergoing change. With the emergence of applied agricultural sciences, a soil's yield was regarded to be its essential fertility measurement. The soil's nutrient content, mainly nitrogen, phosphorus, and potash was interpreted as a fertility indicator until artificial fertilizers came to be seen as being available on demand and substituted self-reliant soil fertility in the eyes of many. But with dwindling resources, the discussion of the term is moving yet again in another direction. The efficiency of nutrient cycling in the soil, especially within the cycle for plant yield as a way of measuring soil fertility, is returning to the foreground. Soil fertility is an ecological life process. The soil is habitat to an immense variety of microorganisms, animals, and plant roots. A fertile soil bears healthy crops over generations, with its low demand for external inputs such as fertilizers, pesticides, and energy. In a fertile soil, soil organisms efficiently turn nutrients and organic matter into plant yields, build up organic matter, protect the plants from disease, and make the soil crumbly. Such a soil can easily be cultivated, absorbs rainwater well, and withstands capping, siltation, and erosion. A fertile soil leads via its filtering to clean groundwater, and it neutralizes, buffers, acids which reach the ground surface through polluted air. A fertile soil also quickly breaks down harmful substances such as pesticides. Moreover, a fertile soil represents an efficient reservoir for nutrients and carbon dioxide. It thus prevents over-fertilization of rivers, lakes, and seas. In the view of organic farming, soil fertility is mainly the result of biological processes and not of applied chemical nutrients. A fertile soil reacts actively with the plants. It structures itself and is capable of regeneration. Balancing the appreciation of the soil's functions and the demand that it functions. Today, the term soil quality is sometimes used instead of soil fertility. Soil quality is the sum of all socially valued functions of the soil. This perspective may help to extend attitudes to the soil into new areas. Nevertheless, one needs to appreciate that the definition of soil quality, determined by soil functions, always depends on contemporaneous economic and/or political constraints. The most important natural soil functions are production function, yields that suit local conditions, transformation function. Nutrients are efficiently turned into a yield. Habitat function, living space for an active and diverse flora and fauna. Degradation function, degradation, transformation of plant and animal residues, and thereby closing the nutrient cycle. Self-regulation function, no danger of being permanently thrown off its healthy balance, e.g., efficiently digesting or suppressing pathogens which penetrate the soil. Filtering, buffering, and storage function, retaining and breaking down harmful substances, keeping nutrients in the soil, storing carbon dioxide.
I looked up, I was just curious, Ron, about the length of San Joaquin Valley. I mean, a low end, they say 400 miles long from Redding to the Tehachapis, which is like the grapevine, basically, and then 50 miles wide. But if you want to go, why is this so fertile? This land is very fertile. This is like a breadbasket of US, or one of them. There is talk about this was once, an island. West of this was an island, and it came together. So this used to be a bay here. California used to be like a little island, and then the landmass came together. So maybe that's why it's so fertile, because of all the minerals from when
Well, it's fertile because of all the flooding we used to have.
That to the Sierra.
Until they put the dams in, and then they sort of messed things up. But I've always had the idea that if you want to help your soil out, you go over there to the oceans, you get the seaweed, and you chop that up, and you come and you grind that up into your soil. I think that would be the fastest way to regenerate your soil. That's just my idea.
That's one of the agendas that Duane has on his list of things to do. Yeah, we have so much seaweed here washing up ashore. Just get some people, hire some Mexicans, and get a processing kind of facility going, and grind it up, dry it out, grind it up, and there's a lot to it. The seaweed, yeah, a lot of minerals there.
If you happen to have a river, a freshwater river, you could rinse them out there and then take them out and dry them and chop them up. They got plenty of rivers up north that could do all of that. And I don't know if that's being done or not.
We have an estuary here where the fresh water meets the salt water. So that could
you can rinse them out right there.
Yeah, that could be. But it could be used for plant food, for food, supplements. That's a great resource. And people are doing it. You could do a documentary on it. I know there's documentaries on it. Yeah, the one documentary I saw was about the kelp production. There's huge amounts of kelp in the ocean that they're harvesting, these boats, dragging them in with nets and then harvesting them on the land and, processing them. Huge process, but still available for a while till the chemtrails do their number on the oceans as well as the soil. But
they're hell bent on destroying the earth. There's no doubt about that. Another thing they can do is there's certain plants they can grow and just let the land rest for a year and until those plants back under the ground. That helps out a lot. There's certain, I can't remember the plants they were using to refurnish the soil, but maybe you guys could remember them.
Yeah, there's a lot of cover crops like alfalfa and some of the beans and, grains that you can use for cover crops, and then turn them under, and it'll provide nitrogen. Redo the soil, regenerate the soil with these things. Or you can do permaculture type activities where you stack the layers. You don't have to till. You stack everything, and then it's self-sustaining after a while. You don't have to touch the soil. You don't have to disturb the little critters there by tilling them, because that does disturb them, you know.
Kevin's reading on the soil and the cell and the solar. I'll put those three together because they're really kind of all part of the same thing. And what we're talking about is actually building, or, well, let's say creating out of the individual, like shining like the sun, and producing the light elements or the natural relations, whatever they might be. So association with the soul and the cell as the individual in the oceanic unit, if you will. If it's a cell in the, you know, a drop of water in the ocean, the same thing, just like the rays of light. And but we do have to do some kind of a focus that has one of the particulars, let's say, of the 7 elements, let's say, if I was to use that 7 as a catch, or let's say, you know, as Val, you were saying, the 5 layers. That's very good. It could be just 5, whatever.
5 zones.
And yeah,
I was referring to
5
zones. Yeah.
Right. And I actually think there's 7 zones or continents on Earth, in the solar Earth, I'll call it, or the universal Earth planet that is here. You know, it's a unit of awareness, we'll say, as a whole. But in terms of it, whatever it is, its essential nature or beingness has, of course, components. And just like we have our bodies, physical, mental, emotional, causal, soul, solarity, whatever you call them, our whole body or being. And it's like an onion, so it fits with that idea. The onion has sheaths or skins that peel. They're not all parts, are not always necessary. Its essence is what's necessary. And so when individuals realize that and take that into their self-sustaining position, we'll say, and or as their relative position, that is in a union with all life and with the not only the natural universe, but the real life, the true reality life is, there we have that is the individual becoming aware and being as shining as the sun on their field of dreams, their emerald forest and their mountain of light and whatever. These things I've been receiving about using words to describe this wholeness. Of course, it doesn't matter really the specifics, except for they're just like our natural world is related. We have the forest and the fields and the rivers and the oceans and the mountains and the sky inside this bubble of atmospheres that I think also relates to the 5 layers, the 5 atmospheres, the biosphere, the atmosphere, the solar sphere, and that conglomerate. You know, and that's, you know, at least that's a view that may be still of the simulator and the direction of our controlled mechanism here you know, within the gravity field of the universe, etc., you know, whatever it is holding it together. But the thing is, we have to, that's what we're doing, is becoming aware of that all isness, and it's like an onion in its wholeness with its spheres and sides and what have you. You know, again, just the real thing is to see when each person individually sees, that's a huge step, because they're now starting to do the same that could be throughout creation, instead of, or wherever we're in true existence, where we are, that is, okay? But the reality is that what they're promoting is this amoeba-like cellular repetition of that's totally out of control. And that's like this virus that's growing into 8 strains, the COVIDity, now up to 22 spike proteins. It's doubling, essentially, that kind of thing. That's what nature does in its raw state. But I think that this thing that we're recognizing is completely reversed or inversed from that. That is it being, you know, not just another side of the hand. It's like totally like our hand inversed, looking outward. I don't know. It's just a metaphor, but that's how I'm seeing it. You know, thanks, Val. I went on there a bit, but I really like that soul and cell related to nature and the environment, and how things are naturally take care of themselves if they're allowed to.
Yes, if they're
as
allowed
opposed to
Yes,
manipulation,
right.
or what I call manipulation.
But here we are. Thank you, everybody, for joining the show. We end with the NUUU, which is your connection to the true reality that just is. NUUU. Peter? Ronald?
No, you.
And Kevin?
You